Uh, when my own journey started, when my own coaching journey started, I was very, and I wish somebody had told me this early in my learning journey, right? That, we focus a lot on the tools and picking up coaching modalities and the ways of engaging with clients and so on. And I discovered the learnings about competency and and normally a lot of programs, a lot of training programs around coaching will tell you that it is what it is. It's there on the ICF website. Please look it up and we need to practice that. And unless, you consciously practice, you tend to hardwire a style that does not include the thread of competencies running through your coaching conversations. Okay. So my own learning, there was a little bit of unlearning I had to do somewhere along my own journey when I came to the path of, the point of credentialing when I came back and when ICF requires you to demonstrate competencies. And then I was like, oh, okay, now I need to do this as well. And I'm so glad that in the structure of this program, we are introducing competencies extremely upfront so that what you practice, the way you evolve your style, includes that fabric of the competencies running through your own style and conversation. Okay, so it's a very, very important part of what we need to demonstrate from a credentialing perspective. But also, I also tell you the other big learning for me, which was a really late learning that happened in my journey. The other learning that I had was, as I tried to demonstrate the competencies and try to incorporate them in my style of coaching, I discovered that my coaching conversations are becoming more and more powerful. So what would take me 5 to 6 minutes of conversation to get to a point where the coachee shared something or they opened up or surfaced something, with consciously using the competency statements and the markers and so on, it was getting done in a couple of minutes, minute and a half and so on. So a conversation that would have normally taken me 1 hour was getting very nicely accomplished in 40 minutes, 42 minutes, 45 minutes. So that's the other important thing to remember, that it really adds substance to the way you coach. So don't look at it as only something you're learning from a credentialing perspective. And we're going to talk about, for those of you who might be keen on going the credentialing pathway and you're planning to apply for your ICF credentials, we'll talk a little bit about what needs to come in.
Very inspiring. Thanks, Meghna.
Pleasure. Any quick check-in, any questions or anything that you want to clarify at this point? Okay, so we are going to talk about the 8 competencies. This has recently been upgraded by ICF. Okay, so life is a little simpler for you guys as you are on the coaching journey now. Until last year, we used to have 11 coaching competencies, which just meant that you needed to be mindful of a few more things as you coached. But now they have kept up with the way styles of leadership have evolved and the way the world is becoming more and more inclusive. So a lot more respect for diversity, a lot more neutral terminology and things like that. So there are some changes around language, but there are also a little bit of cultural modifications that have come in, and that's how the competencies have got upgraded. Okay. Now we call them core competencies. So what ICF is saying when they're talking about coaching competencies, what they're saying is, we are not very worried about your individual style of coaching. You can use emotional intelligence, you can use the neuroscience based model, you can use an NLP based model, you can evolve your own style. You could, make a hybrid tool of yourself that works for you. You can start with a psychometric. You can allow the client to explore without any basis. You can have standalone conversations, ongoing conversations. Everything is fine as long as each coaching conversation demonstrates these core competencies. Okay, that's the ICF expectation. There are other bodies, guys. You will probably explore and discover other credentialing bodies, newer ones, not that popular, not that well respected, but ICF is the gold standard. Okay, so I can assure you that if you master the ICF competencies, you will clear any other assessment, evaluation, application process. I can promise you that if you are thorough with your ICF core competencies, everything else is going to be a cakewalk. It's absolutely the gold standard. In the world of coaching, where competencies and credentialing go, it's absolutely the best. Okay, so let's look at what the competencies are saying very briefly. Divided into 4 broad sections, okay? The first section is the foundation. Second is co-creating. So remember, we are always talking of coaching being a partnering conversation. So co-creating the relationship, coach does not drive the relationship. Third part, C, which is about how the communication is taking place. And especially what is the coach doing to contribute towards effectiveness of that communication. And the fourth one is cultivating learning and growth, because at the end of the day, a coaching conversation or a coaching support provided to a client is not a means of getting the client to become dependent on that coaching, but a means to facilitate growth and true transformation for the client. So these are broadly the 8 competencies. The first one in foundation talks about ethical practice and embodying a coaching mindset. Okay. The second area, which is co-creating the relationship, is about maintaining agreements. What is it that the coachee is looking for, wanting to work with, and so on. And we'll be looking at this in a little more detail. Fourth one, competency, core competency 4, cultivating trust and safety. Again, very critical, especially with the current shift now. This used to be about trust and intimacy before. It was worded a little differently in the previous model. But some cultures may have certain association with the word intimacy. And of course, there was the element that the clients are being exceptionally vulnerable and when they're sharing things. So an element of enabling safety makes more sense when you are a neutral person, when you are you're not involved in the client's ecosystem, but you're coming in as a coach. So this has been modified to trust and safety now. The fifth one is about maintaining presence. And this is again a very, very critical competency. We'll talk about it a lot more. Communicating effectively is about listening and evoking awareness. So active listening, not just listening, active listening. And the last one about learning and growth is how can coaching enable a client to grow? How is the coach facilitating growth for the client through the course of conversations? Simple enough so far? Now look at these sections, okay? A, B, C, D. You will probably never look at the demarcation of which competency lies under which section unless you give your coach knowledge assessment. Okay, and we'll talk about this when we talk about, a little later today, we'll pick up the credentialing piece. That's the only part where foundation, co-creating relationship and communicating, and D, cultivating learning and growth as sections in which competencies are distributed will become relevant. Otherwise, as far as practically coaching is concerned, just look at the 8 competencies. The demarcation isn't very critical as long as you pick up what each competency means. Okay, let's move forward. Now there is a description, and just for your information, all of this content, of course, it's going to be shared with you. It's also available on the ICF, the Coaching Federation website. You can also look that up. Let's look at one by one each competency, okay? So demonstrating ethical practice. Okay. A coach must be extremely high on demonstration of ethics. Demonstrates integrity, abides by the ICF Code of Ethics. This is a defined, ICF Code of Ethics is a 3-page document about what you can and you cannot do, what are good practices, what are avoidable practices, defined by ICF for coach practitioners. Respecting confidentiality. This is an absolute given, okay? all conversations that happen in the coaching space, including even coaching trainings, okay, there is a defined ask that we respect confidentiality of these conversations. And the last one is maintaining distinction with other support professions. So basically what that means is where you have a context where the client will derive value from coaching, we will support a client by coaching. But wherever we see that, somebody is bringing in a situation or a context that requires far different kind of support, okay, that is outside the scope of coaching, but somebody's coming with clinical depression, somebody's talking about, thoughts of harming themselves or harming others, etc. We need to step outside the bounds of coaching to provide what the client needs, and in which case we will refer the client to a appropriate professional. Any questions on this one? Ethical practice.
Okay, so the last point, maintaining distinctions.
Yeah.
So that also kind of gives us a hint. Like we have to have that awareness. For example, like who is the nearest, clinical psychologist or something like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
So good catch, Raghu. So normally, what you will do is as your own practice evolves, you will have a circle of known contacts where, if somebody is coming in for a help that requires a psychiatrist or any mental health professional, a psychologist, be it or whatever, right? Or even a counselor for that matter. So that it's nothing where the client is claiming to self-harm or anything, but the client is processing very deep grief and loss. Okay, and the client is not in a state of mind at the moment to derive value from coaching. Almost, if I may, the client is not in a mental state where he can be coachable. He needs something else much more. It's like, how we have if there is a pressing health issue, first you will treat symptomatically and then you will treat for the underlying causes.
Right.
So treating symptomatically is not the best course of action, but if somebody is running 104 temperature at that point in time, that's the symptom that needs most an immediate resolution. That's the approach, and ICF is very clear that there are a lot of scenarios in terms of unleashing the potential of the client and getting true transformation where coaching can be extremely powerful. And we are all practice coaches. We know our competencies, we know our modalities, we are all fantastic coaches. But if somebody is coming in with a scenario that needs some other immediate and urgent support, then it is morally we are bound, ethically we are bound to provide that support, that reference to the client. And sometimes it can be very tricky. So I'll share an example. I had a client once who I was working with for career development. Okay, so this lady she came from a media organization. She was in line to be, the company was in the middle of a merger and acquisition. Okay, one media company was acquiring another media entity. My client was my coachee was the client services head in the organization. There was a very clear expectation from the client that once the team integrates, she will lead the larger entity in the new organization when the merger has happened. Okay, so she is responsible for merging the client servicing teams as well as providing seamless support, customer experience to the existing clients as well as the customer portfolio that they will acquire through the acquisition. So she's obviously a young professional, very committed, brilliant girl. Okay, very good with what her role was, managing key accounts, all the marquee logos of the company and all that. And she didn't have experience of handling a large team, and that was her starting point of coming to coaching. Then as this was about to happen, as the engagement started and the acquisition was, the process was initiated, due diligence and all that was going on and so on and so forth. She knew she had a couple of months of time to up her game, and that's why she enlisted coaching support. Okay. just as she was getting started on the journey, she lost her mother to cancer. And her mother had been suffering last couple of years. It was a big loss. She had lost her dad when she was a very a young teenager, and literally it had been her and her mother, no siblings, whatever. And it hit her quite hard. But she was very resolved in coping with it and saying that, she was suffering. It's okay. I think work is what is going to keep me engaged and it'll keep me productive and all that. So I want to focus. I don't want to take a pause. This is important. This is a once in a lifetime career opportunity for me to deal with an acquisition. It'll grow my portfolio, all of that. So very committed to going ahead with coaching and going ahead with her larger objective of leading the acquisition from a team integration perspective. Now 3 weeks in, after she lost her mother, her dog died, and that was the last straw for her emotionally. That every person who I love and everybody who is in my life is just leaving me. I'm feeling so abandoned. And literally, she was in a much better shape coping with her mother's loss. But when she lost her dog, who was about 15 years old, she absolutely broke down. And then, she had stated already in my coaching relationship, she had already stated that she wants to continue with coaching because she wants to continue. The company is not going to stop for doing the acquisition, and she needs to play her part, and she needs to step up to be able to fulfill her expectation from the organization. I had to tell her at that point in time that you are not in a state to go ahead. Please take 10-15 days or whatever time that you need. You need to see a grief counselor.
Right.
Once you process this, you need to deal with what you're going through. You are overwhelmed. Okay. And once you've spoken to a counselor, you come back to me. You let me know what the counselor is saying. So it's not that I stopped talking with her, but I stopped coaching her. She started seeing a counselor eventually. It needed a little convincing on my part. I needed to get her a reference. The first reference I got her, she did not like the person. So she figured out her own. She tapped into her own network to figure out the counselor. Once she started seeing the counselor was okay for her to then continue to focus on the professional goal. Once she confirmed that to me, I resumed coaching.
Great. Yeah.
Okay. So it will happen. And it's a very tricky place because the client herself is telling you, no, the company is not going to stop for me. I know I won't be able to do it. I need support. But it's a tricky place because then it's not about even your effectiveness. I know she would not be able to derive value. She will not be able to make any transformational changes. She will not be able to meet her stated objective if she doesn't get the help at that point in time. So that happens. Be mindful. Even if you have references, do be aware that when you talk to clients, they may have their own preferences and they may say that, okay, yeah, you told me this person, but I found her very uppity. So the person I had referred this client to had a British accent, okay, because she's lived for some time in UK, and for some reason that it just my client didn't gel with this counselor I had referred.
Yep, happens.
Yeah, so it's okay. It's perfectly okay. I told her it's all right. Figure your own. Do you need help? I can help you do the research, or would you prefer on your own? She's like, no, Meghna, you've already helped me. I will figure it out. And she figured. Then she spoke to a couple of people. Somebody she resonated with. She took it forward, etc. But yes, it's a good idea to explore in your own circles. And I'm sure a lot of you will stay connected with each other. See, your coaching cohorts make very good friends. Okay, so remember, some of my professional friends come from my first cohort years ago. And it's always okay to reach out to each other and say, hey, I need a counselor, or hey, I need a good reference for a psychologist, and whatever it is. It's always okay to support each other. And just know that, okay, if this kind of a situation, what's coming up, who can be our go-to people. It's not an urgent issue to solve, but it's good to work on it parallelly while you're fixing your own logistics, and you'll be focused a lot more on your own business plans and marketing and so on. This is also something to just keep on your to-do.
Yeah.
Hi, Deepak.
Hi, Meghna. I have just one question, that if a coach has some previous counseling experience, can he also act as a counselor?
So there is no right answer. So great question, Deepak. Great question. I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah.
I know.
So
Someone can please repeat the question, please.
Yeah,
Okay, for the answer. Yeah.
I would like to respond to this. See, the coach can have, or an individual can have many hats. I personally know many coaches who are motivational speakers, coaches, consultants, mentors, right? And also it is good. Means, for example, I know many coaches who are doing training independently and the coaching independently. What is more important, that when you are wearing that particular hat, right, you will follow that ideology. When you are wearing a coaching hat, you will do coaching. You will not mix coaching with a consulting or counseling. When you are wearing a hat of a counselor, you will do counseling. So a single person can play different roles. So this is what I say. Who are you? You are a independent human being first. You are wearing a hat of a coach during the coaching session. So you, the same person, can wear a different hat and perform a different duty. Okay.
Correct. So thank you for that, Hemant. I'd just like to expand what Hemant is saying a little bit, okay? That there may be scenarios where, for example, you're working in an organization and you're now a professionally qualified coach, and it's very likely the organization will come and tell you, hey, you are a PCC coach, why don't you coach the team? Perfectly okay to do it. Wear the hat of a coach, no problem. At that point in time, don't wear the hat of a colleague, of a friend, of a team member, of a supervisor, of a boss, whatever. So the point that Hemant raised, it's okay to wear multiple hats, but not at the same time. That's the bottom line.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If someone can, ma'am, can you repeat this question? I understood the answer, but what was exactly the question?
The question was, Varun, the question was that when I gave this example where my client required a counselor midway through her coaching engagement, the question that Deepak brought in was that if the coach himself or herself is a trained counselor, can the coach do the counseling also?
Okay.
So that's the answer. We said that yes, but there is a caveat there. If you switch hats completely. That's the only thing.
Yeah. Sorry, another question. So can a coach maybe a counselor or a consultant also?
Yeah.
When he cannot able to solve certain problem while doing coaching, he may be influencing with counseling. Can he suggest some reading material as a reference? Like that, can he do some exercise as a that also as a towards he can do that, some techniques as a coach he can give it, right?
Absolutely. Okay. But so Lakshmi, the only thing to be mindful of is it's absolutely okay to the short answer to your question is yes. I may have many resources, material, tools, techniques in my repertoire as a coach. Can I share them with my client? If I find client will find use, it'll be helpful to my client, please go ahead and share. Nothing to stop us.
Okay. Yeah, yesterday we have seen like reading all those things.
Yes.
Can we share techniques? Okay, can you follow as a homework or as a reference thing I'm giving you? This is one technique. Can you follow this and apply?
Yes,
come back to the next session.
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. So for example, very simple examples, right? So you I don't know what resource you have in mind, but it's perfectly okay to tell, a client who's saying, nothing is working in my life, and the client comes back and you decide some answer, and then you say, okay, here are the things that the client says that I've done well.
No.
Sorry, somebody needs to mute themselves. Yeah. And it's perfectly okay at that point in time to tell the client, why don't you start journaling? I think it'll be helpful for you to recognize that there are so many things that are going well for you, and you're tracking your own progress. It's okay to give them an assignment or, something that they want to do between sessions and just keep you updated. Except my one caveat again, Lakshmi, my one caveat will be, look at the situation that the client is in a broader context. Remember, we are talking about coaching the whole person. Cultivating trust and safety is about the whole person. Competency 4, if you look at the last quadrant on the right, the whole person and the context they are bringing in. Is the material that you're going to share with the client, or the technique, whatever resources you're sharing, is that adequate for them to address what it is? In which case they don't need a reference. If it's helpful for them but not get them to a point of resolution, then possibly it makes sense to refer somebody out.
Okay, thank you.
And clients, and trust me, clients will respect you for doing that. Trust me, you know, there is a fear sometimes we may feel as professionals, that, here I'm sending my client to another person, and that may mean expenses, that may mean time, this engagement will break, it'll disrupt my scheduling, his calendar, all of those worries we will have, the practical concerns. Trust me, the kind of respect the client will come back to you with is unprecedented. They will actually acknowledge that you are interested in their safety, in their best interest, right? They will really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
One allied question to it, Meghna.
Go ahead.
Yeah?
Yeah, Karthik, go ahead.
Yes. When we give such kind of assignments to them,
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it assignment, some kind of suggestions which they have taken in as, okay, I will try 1 week of meditation, or I'll try to read the book, kind of, after a week I'll come back. When they say that, can we keep following up with them after 2 days to ask them, have you done your meditation or something like that, as a reminder? Is it normal to do such things?
Yes, it is absolutely normal. I would be very mindful a lot of things about, as you progress in this, in the journey of becoming a coach, Karthik, you will discover that language is very, very important. So if I was going to ask you, Karthik, so you told me you will do meditation on Sunday, today is Tuesday, so I hope you've done 2 meditations. It may not land very well, and will not have the intended. So I'm not going to ask, did you do meditation? I'm going to ask, hey Karthik, I'm very curious to know, how is that working out for you?
Right. I get that.
And yeah, so absolutely okay. In principle, yes, be mindful of where the client is in their journey, and you be mindful that it lands well with them.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, Nikunj this side.
Yes, Nikunj.
What if the coaching session reaches to a stage where the client says that he is completely blank and he doesn't know what to do next?
Yeah, that can happen. No problem.
What should be done in that case?
Depends. What is he blank on? Where are you in the conversation? Which stage? Which point you are? And it's okay. Client can be blank about something. And so conscious thinking is, I don't know what my options are. And the language client is using is, I'm blank right now. It's okay. Explore. It's perfectly okay. It'll happen.
So in that case, what should the coach do? Because even after asking about like what hurdles are you facing, or what options do you have, or what about the learnings, can you take some learning from your earlier experience? Can you implement your strengths, that what all strengths you had? So even after that the client says that I am blank, I don't know, such cases what should be done?
Nikunj, you brought in a fantastic scenario. Can I request you to hold on to this scenario, and I can do a demo on this in a little while? Let's look at a few competencies, and I'll use your example to do a demo. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, it's a fantastic scenario. It will happen.
Thank you.
It will happen in real life.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes, go ahead, Vinny.
Yes. So we all know that in coaching as well, there are different sectors. There's business coaching, there's personality coach, right? So when it comes to business coaching, and you're helping out an entrepreneur to define their goal and plan out their vision and mission. So at what point as a coach, we should draw the boundary that we are there? Because in the demo session, when we were buddy coaching, we figured out that as a coach, we are not supposed to advise. We are supposed to ask questions. We are helping them to figure out everything. But as a coach, if let's say the client is going through some financial problem and we do have the solution of that problems, let's say for the marketing ideas that we have. So is it okay to provide them the ideas, or should we just guide them that you should go to a marketing firm?
So great question, Vinny. It is okay to share an idea or a suggestion if you have the knowledge in that particular domain. So if you're knowledgeable about marketing, or if you're knowledgeable about financing, generating finance for his business idea, it's okay. Always do it with permission.
Okay.
Always do it with permission. And I will go to the next level and say, if the client takes my idea, I will explore with the client, why are you adopting this idea? Why do you think it will work for you?
Okay.
Because it's important that client takes ownership of that idea. When they start executing, if they don't have the ownership, it's going to fizzle out.
Yeah. And the coach would be accountable if it goes wrong.
Yeah. And you've diluted your place, right? And if you take up the thinking job. So I always say this, right? That the job of thinking and exploring is the heavy lifting job in the conversation. And that is the client's role. Remember we spoke about the client role and the role of a coach and the role of a coachee?
Yes, yes.
So the thinking and generating ideas, coming up with options, strategies to implement, designing actions is the client's role, not the coach's role.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, if I'm an expert, so I've worked 20 years in the financial services, and I get a client who's struggling to pitch their idea to a funding organization. It's okay. I will tell them that, look, may I suggest something, because I've been in this space for a while. May I suggest something? Client may or may not want to suggest. He may be working on something he's not able to articulate, or he may have a half-baked idea or a suggestion from elsewhere. Allow the client to explore. Look at competency 3. Always agreement for the coaching plan, agreement for the coaching relationship, agreement for goals and objectives. So ask permission. If the client is okay for me to share as a coach, I can share my ideas. If the client accepts my idea, fantastic. I will allow the client to still explore a little deeper and say, okay, why do you think it's a good idea? How do you think you would like to implement it? Is there anything else you'd like to explore, and so on? Okay. I'll make sure that the accountability and the ownership of that particular action is still taken up by the client. There may be also another possibility. I make a suggestion and the client says, oh, I don't think this is going to work for me. What should the coach do then? I have 20 years of work experience. That's why I'm suggesting something to the client. Okay, but the client rejects it. It's possibly a good idea. If it wasn't a good idea, and despite knowing the client scenario, I wouldn't have suggested it. But the client does not see merit in the idea that the coach has suggested. Then what? Look at competency 2.
Okay.
Appreciate client autonomy. It is the client's call. It is always the client's call.
So not to argue, but to accept their call and to go forward.
Even forget argument. Argument is a very hard place to be in with a client. Even disagreement, or even telling them, but why wouldn't you consider? Why wouldn't you explore? No, it's a strict no. Okay. If you're bringing in a suggestion to the conversation, hold it lightly. Hold it very, very lightly. Client picks it up, good for the client. Client doesn't pick it up, still good for the client. Because it is their journey. It is their path of learning and development. Look at your competency 2. That's what a coaching mindset is. We are not here to prescribe. Also, guys, remember, when we are talking through these coaching competencies and the descriptions, we're talking about a lot of things to do. Okay. There is only one thing that you're not supposed to do, which is giving advice. That's a disqualifier. If in a conversation, especially if you're submitting something for an ICF assessment for the purposes of credentialing, giving advice is a disqualifier at any level. ACC, PCC, MCC, doesn't matter. Whoever you are, however experienced you are, if you're giving advice, it's a disqualifier. There is only one disqualifier, which is giving advice. Suggestions, ideas, okay, with permission. Hold it lightly. Respect the client's call. Give them the autonomy to choose. They can accept it, they can reject it. Either ways, the coach says, okay, right. So what would you like to do with it now? Okay, I saw a raised hand. Is there another question?
Yeah.
Yeah,
so what I understand is you can't really question your client's decision with a why, but you can always say, how do you see this helping you with respect to your goals, right? Now, could we include storytelling here? If not advising, could I describe something similar that I would have experienced in the past, or someone that I have known in the past and what they did, and I leave the call there? It's just that, okay, I understand how does it feel because I have been in that situation, and this is what I did. Okay, let's talk about what it is with you.
Absolutely.
Or I know somebody who's gone through a similar situation and this is what he did that helped him. Let's talk about what your situation is.
Perfectly fine, Seema. Perfectly fine, Seema. Because that's your packaging. You're coming up with a suggestion for the client, but the way you are communicating is by the means of a storytelling. Perfectly all right. In fact, even I would typically use a technique that I call double disassociation. Okay, I will never give an example. Even if it's my own experience, I never call it to a client. I will never say it's my own experience. I will always ask that, I know somebody who was in a similar kind of a scenario. Would you like me to share the experience that I have observed? If the client says yes, then I will share the experience. Whoever's experience I want to share, even if it's my own, I will never say this is my experience because I want to stay disassociated. I don't want client to feel any pressure that, oh, my coach is saying this, so there must be something more to it. Let me just pick this up because my coach is suggesting.
So you leave the prerogative to him, only it's his prerogative.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look at this thing out here. Embodies a coaching mindset. The second descriptor. Always appreciate the autonomy. If I make mistakes, I have the right to make mistakes and learn from my own mistakes because that is what transformation and growth are about. So facilitates growth. Again, it's okay. It's okay for me to make mistakes as long as the coach can mirror back what the experience has been and what am I learning. Okay, I'm just moving a slide ahead because I'll come back over here.
Thank you for the tip.
Yeah. So again, can you see this respects clients autonomy coming in here again? It's always, and the first one, which is about facilitating learning. So it's okay if they go through a little bit of a trial and error. It is their journey. It's their choice to make. Always. Thanks. Good. Okay, so we kind of touched upon a lot of places, but very quickly.
Can I just interrupt for a moment?
Of course, Nama. Go on.
When we are actually telling a story, and there is a definite reason behind us narrating a story, no matter we were taking the name of a third person. But don't you think this is called very gentle influencing the mindset of the client? It is actually very subtle, cajoling him into a direction that you want him to move into.
No, Nama. I'll tell you why it should not be cajoling. It can be. I hear where you're coming from. Okay, don't fall into that trap. Avoid it becoming a cajoling thing. Make it a suggestion or an option thing for the client and give them the choice. So for example, if I was going to tell a client that, you know what, somebody's, for example, trying to has a fitness goal. Okay, somebody's trying to lose weight. Okay, very common objective. A lot of people will come to you saying, I want to do this, and actually I want to lose 10 kgs or whatever, right? The very common goal that will come up in the initial period. Now, every one of us knows you need to work out. Yeah, you need to exercise, right? If you're trying to lose weight, some format of workout. The client says, oh no, I don't have time. I'm working. My days are very long. I'm working from home. Gyms are closed. Blah 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 blah. It is so tempting at that point in the time to tell a client that there are so many online videos available. You can sign up for an app. You can do so many. It's perfectly okay for you to enlist a workout session that you can do from home. Do your weight training at home, whatever, right? All of us know it's a simple enough suggestion. In all probability, your client also knows. Now, given this context, you want to make it a suggestion. You want to tell story, make it about, one of my friends, would you like me to share the experience of somebody I knew who lost 20 kilos? So client will say, yes, of course, Nama, tell me what happened. How did somebody, I just want to lose 10 kilos, but how did this 20 kgs happen for somebody? Then you can give in your 2-3 suggestions in that experience that you are narrating. That narrative should be, of course, not yours. Even if it's your own success story, even if you have yourself lost 20 kilos, please, please, preferably you will say that a friend I know. Okay, don't put respect the autonomy of the client and talk about.
My question was, when you are indulging in this kind of a technique of narrating a story in the name of a third person, you are actually influencing the client. My question was that. So is that okay? Because we are not in any ways going to try influence the client. It has to come from his or her own self. So what my question was, aren't we actually trying to influence? My question was that, not that can be.
I got your question, Nama. I got your question. So when I'm doing this narrative and I've given the client 3 ideas, okay, start walking for 20 minutes a day, start doing some yoga and whatever else, third suggestion I've given the client as a part of this narrative. So for me as a coach in the conversation, the story ends when the story ends, saying this is a friend of mine who did these things. And of course, she also practiced some nutritional practices and she managed to achieve what she managed to achieve. What would you like to pick up? Your conversation goes back to client autonomy. What would you like to pick up as actions for themselves? Now, the choice is entirely the clients. Do they want to walk? Do they want to run? Do they want to swim? You do yoga? I don't know. But we are not telling the client that please start waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning and go for a walk. No, that is an absolute, first of all, that goes under the section of giving advice. So that would not happen. 2, if you're giving a narrative which has somebody's example, another suggestion, idea, whatever is coming in, the next thing that you must allow the client to explore will be getting deeper into why they want to pick up a specific action. So client says, yeah, I think that's a good thing to do. I think even I can start walking. Then you explore with the client that, how would you like to start? When would you like to start? Do you want to explore the time of the day? Then you go into the whole action planning phase of the discussion and you allow the client to own the idea that, yes, I'm going to be doing walking. If you left it at that, just those 3 suggestions, invariably the client is not going to pick it up because the idea has not yet taken seed in their own cognitive thinking.
Moreover, Ms. Srivastava, I think the idea is to trigger the thought process of the coachee in his situation, in his environment. So having narrated the story, we are coming back to the current environment, current situation that the client is facing after triggering the thought process.
Exactly. This whole conversation started off, is it okay to give suggestion? This whole thread initiated when we said, is it okay to give client an idea or a suggestion if you know something? Yes, it's okay. Come back, give your suggestion, share your story, example, idea, suggestion, whatever it is. Come back that, my dear client, now here you are in your journey. How do you want to take things forward? So ultimately, yes, come back to the current reality. I saw a question a minute ago that are we going to be talking about competencies in more detail? Yes, today's session is only about an introduction to the competencies at a high level and to introduce you to something called markers, okay, what they are. In the subsequent sessions, over the next few weeks, we are going to look at each competency and the markers of each competency in a lot more detail. Okay, so this is totally the crux of how you demonstrate yourself as a competent coach. So this is going to take up, we're going to spend some time in deepening this area of our learning. Okay, can I just quickly talk about trust and safety?
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
fine now.
Yes, Varun, go ahead.
See, I know it's a long journey, and for us, like for me, because this is the first time attending something like this, but still, I don't know why I have this fear, or I'll say I don't have that much clarity as to find that line that, okay, now I'm going into that advising section, and here is where I'm suggesting, right? So my question is around that only, because like, let me quote a situation here. Like, there are a lot many philosophers, right? And then a philosophy which has worked. Like, for example, if you want to achieve a goal, then that goal should be very dear to you, and you should be willing to do everything for that. So now the reason why you're not able to achieve that goal is because maybe that goal is not that much dear to you. So there is a story where there was this Rishi Muni where somebody asks is that I want to find God, but I'm not able to find it. So he says that, okay, maybe your want for that is not that great. He said, no, my want is fine. Then he puts his head in the water and let it be there for 2-3 minutes. And then when he take him out, he says, if your want is this much, like the way you were suffering and you wanted to have that air, your want should be something like that. Right? You're narrating in that direction, and I'm trying to quote that philosophy that your want should be there. Now, where will I put this? Like, is it advising? Is it suggesting? I'm not sure. That is the confusion with me.
Okay, so this, I would just call it a metaphor. Varun, this is really simple. You're trying to tell somebody that your goal should be this much meaningful, or you should desire something. Your intensity of desire should be as high as, gasping for breath is when you move things forward. So I would simply call it a metaphor.
Okay, so that's fine, right? So as long as you're directly stating that, hey, like you mentioned before, like at 6 a.m. start walking, or like make sure that every day you're taking out 2 hours in the evening, 6 to 8, do this kind of exercise. That is like directly stating that, okay, this is not advisable, right? This is not what we have to do.
I'm sorry, can you rephrase your question?
No, my question was this. I think you have already answered it. My point is, as long as we are very straightforward and saying that, okay, at 6 a.m. you have to do that, and at 10 p.m. you have to do this, something like that. You're being very straightforward. That is what we should not do. That is where we have to.
Yeah, because that is prescribing. I wouldn't want to tell you what time. I wouldn't want somebody to tell me that get up at 6 o'clock, get up at 5 o'clock, get up at 10 o'clock. Yeah, it's my life.
Got it.
So that is what coaching mindset is.
Sure. Thanks.
Okay. Can I quickly talk a little bit about the third competency, maintaining agreement? I want to draw your attention to the fact that, the agreement word is used 3 times very differently in this description of this competency. So it talks about coaching relationship, coaching plan and goals, and then it talks about session goals and objectives. So ICF is very clearly distinguishing about the client must engage in the partnership of coaching. He would want to be supported. I won't go to a client and say, hey, you know what, you need coaching. You will lose weight. You will get the promotion. You will progress in your life. You will get transformed if I get to coach you. No, the client must express the need for coaching, first of all. Okay. So then the whole marketing, conversion, all of that will happen. But the express need for coaching must come from the client. And that's how you would get into a coaching relationship. The second descriptor of this competency talks about what's the overall coaching plan and goals. So what should you work with? Hey, you know what? I think you're doing quite well professionally, but you know what? You're not playing any sport. I think you should develop a competency for, I don't know, what's your favorite sport? Tell me and I will help you. I will coach you on it. Absolute no. Okay. So what are the objectives that the client wants to be coached on, and that will help us decide what the overall coaching plan should look like. But the stated needs and goals should come from the client. It is perfectly okay if the client says, what I want, and the coach helps the client explore what is meaningful for them, what is significant in their life right now. So it is okay to have a goal setting structured conversation focused around helping them identify the goals, but the identification must be done by a client. And the third part is, once I have agreed that, I will coach you for 10 sessions over the next 2 months, next 3 months, whatever it is, or I will coach you once every fortnight. So once that agreement is in place for the coaching plan, as well as the objectives identified, the agreement must happen in every session, and the objectives for each coaching conversation must be defined. So every conversation, now the client has had 4 sessions with me already. Today I'm meeting client for my 5th coaching conversation. No problem. As a coach, I still have to check in saying, okay, you know, thank you for coming in, making time. I know where we were in our journey. How's it going? I'm very curious. What would you like to explore today? What's a good outcome you're looking for? What would you like to take away for yourself at the end of our conversation today? Okay.
Yeah, so the Meghna, I just want to add here.
Yeah.
See, the agreement with the client is at 3 levels.
Yeah.
The level number 1 is your coaching relationship. What are the expectations from each other? So it is the relationship level agreement. It is the expectation setting related agreement. Then we go to the formal agreement, which has a overarching coaching agreement. That is, okay, I want to develop this particular competency, and then for that I have signed this particular coaching agreement for the 6 session, 10 sessions, 10 session. So you know that there is a overarching coaching assignment agreement. So one is the relationship agreement, expectation setting agreement, point number 1. Point number 2, the coaching contract, what you will sign with the client. And the third is, at the start of each session, you will follow the coaching process. After the connection, you will basically finalize the coaching goal. So as a coach, you need to show competency that you have a clear coaching relationship agreement, you have a clear coaching contract signed, and you finalize or contract at the start of each and every coaching session. So these are the 3 types of agreements and 3 types of coaching competencies what you need to display during your relationship with the coaching.
Thank you, Hemant. Good with that? Establishing and maintaining. And of course, the core competency says it is the coach's responsibility to A, establish, and B, then comply with whatever has been agreed. So in the spirit and in the letter of whatever we have agreed with the coachee, we must stay in compliance with what the agreement is. And the 4th one talks about cultivating trust and safety. Trust and safety is about creating a supportive environment. See, whatever situation the client is in, whatever goals, objectives that they are bringing, and more importantly, whatever challenges that are getting in their way, hurdles that they are encountering, they're going through a period of trial and error as they are evolving in their journey, etc. They are making themselves extremely vulnerable in presence of a coach, because the coach is going to ask them, so how did that go? Did you know, I'm very curious to the meditation example that we were talking about earlier, saying, okay, you said you wanted to try meditation. How did that work out? Coach, it was fantastic. Or the client can come up and say, oh, you know what? I don't know how to start meditating. I would love to, but I'm not sure where to begin. I tried, I sat down for 5 minutes, the hardest 5 minutes of my life. And, you know, both those outcomes, whether the client has had a success or the client has struggled to execute their actions, they are bringing in something that's extremely personal to them as they are evolving. So they are being totally vulnerable. And as a coach, our responsibility is to create a safe and a supportive environment. So if they are progressing, look at the third one, the third descriptor over here. Acknowledge the work of the client in the process. So if it was simple as, you know, as simple as identifying 3 or 4 actions and moving on with executing those actions, they wouldn't possibly need to engage with a coach. The fact that they're engaging with a coach is because the goals are significant and meaningful for them in life. And at the same time, it's not easy enough for them to accomplish. So they are enlisting support of another individual, professional, a coach to help them out. So create a safe space, respect the whole person of the client. What do we mean by a whole person? There are so many layers to us as people, right? There is, remember the iceberg model? We said the 20% that shows up and the 80% that doesn't show, that supports the iceberg at the surface. All of that is the whole person. So the beliefs we hold, the thinking process we have, how we feel about certain things, There are some mind blocks we may have, my own map of the world comes into the picture, right? That's all of those different parts add up to make me who I am as a person. Okay. And if as coaches, we differentiate saying, okay, this is the rational part of the client. I'm going to deal with the thinking, cognitive function of this person and say, okay, what is logically the next step you would like to take? What's a good timeline for you to have? Without respecting the struggle that he is going through mentally to try something new, to hardwire a new habit, to make a shift from something that they've been doing for years, etc. It is not respecting the whole person. And that will show up in our conversation. So when we're talking about support and creating the supportive environment, a lot of that support is also coming from the non-cognitive function, things that the client is processing. So competencies talk about respect the whole person. With me so far? Establishing agreement, cultivating trust and safety. All right.
Yes.
Thank you. I see a couple of messages coming up in the chat. Seema saying that half of the Indians would have to take conscious effort and remind ourselves of the coach's role because it's very natural to us, most of us, to advise even before listening completely. Therefore, it will be a conscious and repeatedly conscious effort. Yes, absolutely. It's so hard becoming a coach. Yes, it's a competency we have to consciously develop. Absolutely. Right. Let's look at the other four. So maintaining presence, the first one, full focus on the client. We are not multitasking. We are not, looking at any mails that we are getting in. We are not getting distracted about what's going on in the environment. We are fully focused on the client, demonstrating curiosity, managing emotions, and creating space for reflection. Why reflection? Any thoughts on why reflection is coming into presence?
Because unless a person reflects, how is he or she is going to come up with a solution?
Correct. So there is a very beautiful quote I was reading the other day, that we don't learn from experience. We learn from thinking about our experiences. Okay. So as you go through whatever event in life is happening and how it's related to the objective that you're working on, it is the connections that we make when we think about that event with respect to the outcome we want to achieve. That's when we figure out what's a good plan of action, what are the next things to do. So this reflection is something that coaches create. How can we create the space for reflection?
Allowing the person to think and not intervening in between.
Allowing the person to think, not interrupting him. Absolutely true. Also, asking questions.
Yes, asking good questions.
Asking reflective questions, right? So what does it mean for you? You said that you tried this, it didn't work out. What do you think is going on? Give them the space to think, give them the quiet moment to reflect on. Allow them to look inwards. Okay, so creating space. Managing emotions. What is this about, managing emotions? Is it, are they referring to, is ICF referring to my emotions as a coach or the emotions of my coachee?
Both, I think.
Both emotions.
Both.
It's kind of both. It has to be. Yeah.
It has to be both. Absolutely. So as a coach, as a professional, when I'm going into a conversation, I must be self-regulated first. I must be aware enough to ground myself, to regulate my emotional space. And sometimes even, if I know I'm disturbed, I've had a harrowing day just before, I'm going to I may resort to some practices to ground and center myself as I go into coaching. Okay. So managing, first of all, our own emotion as a coach so that you don't go into the session with any baggage. Okay. And second, helping the client as well to manage emotions. Now the client is saying that, look, I've been struggling with this for the last 5 years of my life. I have not been able to progress. I hope at least you can help me with coaching now. At least you can help me do something about this. There is frustration. There is irritation there. There is some baggage coming from past experiences. Helping client manage their emotions. So you will learn a little bit about emotional intelligence also as well as you progress. But from a competency perspective, a very simple technique can be help the client label what they are experiencing, request them, suggest that we want to park it for the purposes or tap into that energy. If it's a positive emotion, it's a very powerful way to tap into their energy and creativity. Get them to be resourceful about it. Demonstrates curiosity. What can this
know about the client, to know about asking questions, asking curious questions.
You're asking,
find out.
Yeah, you're asking curious questions and not judgmental questions. Oh, that didn't work for you. Oh, did you try hard enough? No, you're just remaining curious. Oh, it didn't work out for you. What happened? I'm curious to know what happened. So you can use the word curious. It's a very neutral word to use where, all it reflects is I want to find out what's going on. Even if you don't use that specific word, keep your tone neutral, keep it relaxed. Keep the questions broad. Okay. It demonstrates curiosity. And as we are talking about maintaining our presence, the maintaining presence happens very much in partnership with listening actively. So listening actively, it's an underrated competency according to me, because if you're not listening actively, a lot of other competencies will fall apart. Okay. So one of the key things that we talk about in a coaching conversation is whatever the coach is saying has to come off the conversation. So remember, we've agreed that what are the objectives? What does the client want to take away from here, from this conversation? You're in an ongoing conversation, client is reviewing, okay, I did this in week 2, I did this in week 3. Again, you're active listening, because if you have not been following the client's progress through week 2, week 3, week 4, and so on, you will not catch the pattern. The client anyway is not aware of the pattern. So listening holistically, okay, listening for things that the client is not saying. Okay, I'll give you one of my own examples. Okay, I was working with one of my peer coaches, and one of the goals I had identified with me was deepening some coaching related skill. Okay, and I was working with her a couple of years back, and she asked me a question. Are you all able to see me? Are you able to see me on the camera?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so watch me, okay? So this peer coach of mine, she asked me a question. So Meghna, what does this mean to you? All that has happened, okay? And I've identified 2 or 3 actions for myself and all that. So she tells me, now, if this doesn't happen, Meghna, what will happen? If this growth doesn't translate for you, what will it mean? And I went like this, stagnation. And her next comment to me was, I saw your shoulders stoop when you said the word stagnation. What does that stagnation mean to you? And then it became my own goal became a lot more sticky and significant for me, because I don't want to stagnate, but that's my emotion behind surfacing a particular goal, and my coach caught it. So holistic listening, it can be about things specifically which the client is not saying in words. It can be emotion, shift in energy, it can be body language, they're doing okay, and then suddenly say, what happened? And the client goes all like this. I don't want to talk about it. It's an unpleasant experience. They're just shutting down. Then you've got to explore that, you know, I just sensed you almost close in on yourself. What are you processing? So remember, whole person. We just said whole person here, trust and safety.
Yes, yes.
And when we are, and hence also connected back to our listening, when it's the whole person, we've got to listen for things which is not said. So expression, is the client smiling? Are they looking, you know, when they're planning their actions, if they're scrunching up their face saying, okay, I'll get up at 6 o'clock tomorrow, you can be rest assured they're not getting up. At that point in time, it's perfectly relevant if you go in and say, I sense a little reluctance as you say that. What's likely to get in your way? Okay, listen to the body language, emotion, expressions that's going on, because that's also listening. And hence we're saying listen actively. Reflect it back. Very important part of listening, because the client, as I'm saying stagnation, I am not aware that my shoulders are drooping. Okay, but my coach is watching me and picking it up and saying, you know, Meghna, why is this growth so important to you? Because as you say that, you know, when the growth is not happening, stagnation is actually making you slump down. So what's going on? So client is not aware of the emotions that they are processing in the coaching conversation. Reflect it back, share that understanding back with the client. Okay. And help the client integrate understanding. Support the communication by integrating. So what they are stating, what a client is rationally, cognitively aware of, and what they are processing for themselves needs to get integrated. So this is also something that goes directly correlates to evoking awareness. Okay, the next competency, your integrating understanding also ties into your evoking. Hence, it goes directly to how you're helping client become more aware. Okay, evoking awareness is essentially about generating new insights, sharing observations, supporting new learning, and help them by reflection and reframing. And the last competency, which is facilitating client growth, this is the part where their transformation is truly happening. So any typical coaching conversation is not just about, or a coaching engagement is not about meeting the two objectives that the client has identified in the beginning. What is the client becoming from the beginning of the coaching engagement to the end of the coaching? Okay, how is the client growing in their perspectives, in their learning, in their ability to execute actions? Besides the stated goal, which is a transactional objective, what is the transformational objective that the client, the journey that the client is making, which is internal to them? Okay, that's what truly the coaching outcome should be around. Of course, always respect autonomy. Coach helps the client celebrate progress. This is a new descriptor that has come into this model of coaching competencies. Earlier, the competencies used to say acknowledge the progress. Now they're saying helping celebrate the progress and partner with the client to close the session. Always be checking in to see, is there anything else that you need, or have we covered everything that you wanted from this session or from the overall engagement that we are engaging on. All good?
Time together, because we're going to share with you.
I have a question and something to share.
We're going to share with you.
Okay.
All across on all those who are.
Should I do it after the video?
Can we wait for the video?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you.
We're giving out there and all the people over here an update on the core competency of ICF. They've just launched this just a couple of days ago, and I think it's important for us to understand the impetus, the understanding, the reason, and also the application of this new competencies update. Do you want to know about updates? It will impact all of you, okay? Yeah, you guys are in the transition phase. So I'm going to share with you guys the difference between the 11 competencies and the new updated competencies that ICF have done. So what has happened over the last 25 years when ICF existed, they have spent the last 2 years with over 1,300 different coaches from around the world, from both from ICF community as well as outside of ICF community, to really look at the entire competency list. And they have came together and say, hey, we look at it and I think we need to refine it. So just a couple of years ago, they also established what we call the PCC markers, right? PCC MCC level. So PCC markers, where we have subject matter experts to break down the entire markers to give the evaluation more specific notes for them to mark, to grade students. How do we know you've achieved PCC markers? Not based on whatever I just say it is, but there's several characteristics we're looking for. So they've discovered 40 over different characteristics. And today, ICF as a whole is proud to present a brand new updated model in hopes to capture and encapsulate the ever-changing domain and economy that we're facing. So in this new update, they hope to capture in what we call a global cultural shift, bringing new dimensions from both Eastern, Western, and all kinds of cultures to integrate them together and to respect diversity as well. So let me show you. And then what we've done here, again, this is my interpretation of things, but because what will happen is that over the next several years and several months and weeks, ICF will provide new updates to the competency as well. So this is just my analysis of what I think that of how we should approach the ICF core competencies. So for those of you watching here, right, this is just my interpretation, right, of what and how it's relevant to the 11 competencies and the 8 new competencies of the ICF. So let me explain to you. Okay, for those of you watching, you wonder what they're doing. They're actually taking out their phones and everything. Okay, so for those of us tuning in all the way from all over the world, I encourage you to be part of this journey as we transit to 2021 and 2020, as we encapsulate and assimilate these new competencies into our coaching practice. Now, for those of you who are coaches or becoming coaches, this is important for you to understand the different concepts and different notions that are different. So, in the 11 competencies of ICF, we have the standard 11 that we all know and familiar with. And for those out there, I've been teaching you applying the coach model as well to understand these competencies. So what you want to know is the updated core competencies is 8 different core competencies. In this 8, ICF has evaluated that these are different, these are areas for coaches to work on and to improve. For example, one is demonstrating ethical practice. So how I see in relation to our current practice is this. So let me read to you ICF's definition for it. Okay. And I think it's important for you to hear this. So ICF's definition for demonstrates ethical practices, understands and consistently applies coaching ethics and standards of coaching. Understands and consistently applies coaching ethics and standard of coaching. So this ties in really closely with the current one, meeting ethical guidelines. So it's not just meeting the ethical guidelines. I think ever more in this global economy, it's all about ethics. Yeah. Even more accountability is sought for. Think about Enron, think about the financial crisis, think about what happens locally and even in Singapore with cases of the universities and different other issues that we have faced so far. Ethics has become the core of all things. Now, why is this so important? When we talk about the vertical and the horizontal axis, on the vertical axis, when we seek for autonomous culture, we neglect what's happening on the vertical axis. Where does our morality come from? Where does our ethical standard come from? Because at the end of the day, there must be an absolute, there must be some way for us to know what's right, what's wrong. So that's why we talk about why ethics is so important, even in the coaching profession. The second one embodies the coaching mindset. This is something that is, I think it's a really good input, but if we look at the current core competency, there isn't something like that yet. Right? So the updated competencies have shown us that there's this component called embodies a coaching mindset, and it says this. It says that it develops and maintains a mindset that's open, curious, flexible, and client-oriented. And that's exactly what I've been telling all of us here, right? It's all about curiosity, being curious, this insatiable thirst to know, hey, and be curious about why the person is thinking like that, with no judgment, no pretext, and all there just for the client, like a mirror. So having the coaching mindset is key. So is this important for coaches? I think it's more than just for coaches. It's important for leaders. So for leaders who are out there thinking, is coaching relevant to me? Look at Forbes, look at Google. Recently, there's an article on Forbes telling us that the future of leadership is coaching. Leader as a coach, manager as a coach. The third one establishes and maintains agreements. So this is what it says, right? Partners with the client and relevant stakeholders to create clear agreements about the coaching relationship, processes, plans, and goals. Establishes agreements for the overall coaching engagement as well as those for each coaching session. So this encapsulates quite similar to established coaching environment, but I think what it does more in this sense is that the key essence is partnership. Many times that's one key factor that separates coaching from consulting and all the other job functions, right? Look at mentoring, look at advising, look at consultants or training. They are highly domain driven. They are highly, so whereas coaching is a partnership, even in the design of this training that we have here, it's a partnership. I'm partnering you to design what you want to learn, how deep you want to go, how much you want to learn. It's a partnership. The fourth one is cultivates trust and safety. Now, this I think ties in very nicely with trust and intimacy with the client. So, unfortunately, I wish that ICF keeps intimacy over here. Many people think that, and I know the struggles of many of the coach trainings out there. They think that intimacy is a very sexual connotative word, but to me it's not. It's your mind that's thinking too much of it. To me, it's called conversational intimacy. Having that kind of conversation that a person can be naked with you and to be honest with you, to be true, to lay down the cards, right? To be really real with you, what we call real. Sometimes, how do we be real? And then, of course, comes with safety. The more safe the person feels, the more connected the person feels, there's a sense and deeper sense of intimacy with you in the conversation. So it says this, the ICF's definition for trust and safety, it partners with clients to create a safe, supportive environment that allows the client to share freely, maintains a relationship of mutual respect and trust. Now the 5, maintains presence. So we know that this is coaching presence, right? Maintains presence. Similar, but a bit not similar in the sense that it says here, it is fully conscious and present with the client, employing a style that's open, flexible, grounded, and confident. In the previous definition for coaching presence, it's a bit different, right? In here, I think it encapsulates what we've been talking about in this last couple of days and weeks, about the flexibility and the learning style of the client. Are we able to be flexible to move? Remember, the principle is this: the person with the greatest flexibility will win in the conversation. Number 6, listens actively. Right? It seems like almost a play of word. Like listening and listen actively. Right? Say, so after so much research, you just switch the words around. Like, what on earth is this? Now, there's a big difference. Look at it. Which are the verbs? Which are the noun? You are listening. This is the verb. Here is actively. That's the verb. Yeah. So you're going to think about what's the big difference here. So it says here, focuses on what the client is and not saying to fully understand what is being communicated in the context of the client systems and to support the client's self-expression. This is what I call the 2 pillars of truth, right? Which is coherence and correspondence. For those of you out there wondering what's coherence, correspondence, come to one of the classes. Okay. The next one is evoking awareness. That's very important. Okay, evoking awareness. Evoking awareness, I think, ties in very nicely with active listening, powerful questioning, direct communication, and creating awareness. Invoking awareness. So it says this, facilitates clients' insight and learning by using tools and techniques such as powerful questioning, silence, metaphor, or analogy. What we have been doing so far, right? What have I been doing so far with all of us here? So you see that in this class as well, we're actually doing the updated core competencies already. Yeah. Now, one of the things that I'm really, really sad that we didn't include as one of the core competencies actually separating powerful questioning from invoke awareness. Why is that so important? Because many times people do not know a big difference between powerful questions and powerful questioning. Today, there's so many coaching books out there. If you look into Amazon, look at Barnes and Nobles, look at Kinokuniya, look at all the different other stores, you find thousands of coaching books out there teaching you what are the best coaching questions to ask. Coaches today around the world ask me, how do I ask better questions? Then I ask them this question. That's a wrong question to ask me. Because it's not about asking better questions. It's about how do I ask those questions. It's about powerful questioning, not powerful questions. And we always say this, powerful questioning, it's asking the questions in the right context, in the right moment, in the right space, the right tonality, in a given moment where there's correspondence and coherence to produce the greatest effect for the client. Come to one of our advanced classes and you learn more about this. Okay, now that's evoking awareness. And finally, in the competency number 8, I think this is very beautiful. It's called facilitating client's growth. And it says it partners with the client to transform learning and insight into action, promotes clients' autonomy in the coaching process. Meaning to say that in this whole process, it's always client focused. I'm always focused about the client, what the client wants, how do I help the client, how do I empower the client. So here nicely ties in with all these competencies, 9, 10, and 11, right? We actually facilitate the whole process. So it's less dogmatic, it's less formulaic. We want to facilitate the client's growth and progress throughout this whole journey. So I think the new competencies does encapsulate some of these ideas and notions of it. And is there is. So with the help of all the coaches around the world, as we make coaching even better to the next level, in the next update, what we want to know is that the heart of coaching lies in the ability to change lives. So for those of you out there thinking, should I learn coaching, should I not learn coaching, should I be a coach? That is probably the wrong question. The question is this, right? What would make a difference for you today? What would it mean for you if you're able to improve your conversation or your communication with another person? Because coaching at its fundamental is about conversational mastery, then so much of a new profession. Improve the communication, you improve the relationships. So hope I see you at one of our advanced classes coming soon. So join us. We hope to see you, and all our friends here will want to join you as well on this coaching journey. We're here to support you and all of us. So stay tuned for more updates because.
All right. How was that?
Insightful.
Insightful, right? I really liked how it spoke about, and Karthik has commented as well. It's about powerful questioning and not questions. The right time and the right questions, and not necessarily a repository of super powerful questions to ask. Okay, Seema, I know you had a question. I'm just a little mindful of time. Do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, sure. So when we go back to competency 5,
yeah,
okay, which is being in the present. So while I, as a coach, I am in the present, I keep my cell phone aside, and this is a real life situation, an experience that I'm sharing. Okay. I keep my cell phone aside, I'm all attentive. Now, the client is someone who is, and I've been hired by the organization, not the client, not the coachee.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Now the client, the coachee is looking at his phone. He's got multiple meetings and multiple deadlines. So I'll tell you what I did, and let me know if it's the right thing or not, and you can suggest more. Sure. Okay, so I told him, while I understand this is very important for me, I assume it's equally important for you as well. Is that an okay thing? But I did it, even if it's not okay.
Yeah, yeah. So you have to go with bringing their attention to the fact that they're getting distracted. But it is the right thing to do. As your journey evolves, you may want to play with the language a little bit more. I say something like, the human brain is not wired to multitask, especially or something which is so significant to both of us. So I'm going to put my phone aside and I'm going to stop looking at my laptop, because I really want both of us to be focused 100% on our conversation, so that you derive the maximum value from our chat today. So I'm giving in the messages that, look, brain can't multitask. I'm, not a superhuman. I'm putting my phone aside because it's the right thing to do, to give us value, to give you the value. Okay, that's just setting the tone.
Okay. Okay. And the other thing that I wanted to share, you mentioned that we have to be regulative of our emotions. Something that I've experienced is, especially if 2 coaches have been hired and you are the successor, okay, do not let the other coaches paint the picture of the client in your mind. Don't let it influence that, is something that I would want to mention.
Yeah, that's your core competency: presence, being non-judgmental, being curious, being flexible. Whether it's a previous coach, whether it's a boss, whether it's some peer of your client, doesn't matter. You are curious, you are present, you are listening to what the client is sharing. Okay, perfect. Guys, very important part that ICF has introduced as a part of the competencies, okay, is the what are called the PCC markers. Okay. Now, where are markers most importantly used? They are used in our assessment as coaches. So when we apply for credentialing to ICF, We'll typically be required to submit call recordings. If it's a ACTP program like ours is, the recording won't be evaluated by ICF directly, but by the organization's assessors. If it's another pathway, there are multiple pathways available for credentialing. You may be sending recordings to ICF. In any case, if you do decide to progress ahead from PCC onwards to progress to your MCC journey, the conversations are necessarily evaluated by the ICF assessors. It's a very, very neutral, transparent process. Why do I say it's a neutral, transparent process? Because each competency has certain markers. And what the assessor is doing is listening for these markers. Wherever in the conversation the marker is getting reflected, they are giving you a, they're capturing that as an instance of, yes, the coach has done this, the coach has done this, the coach has done this. Okay. So demonstrating ethical practice, I'll quickly go through the markers. This is a table that this is even given on, again, you can refer to. This content is shared with you in this presentation itself and in your coach study guide as well. The first competency, demonstrates ethical practice, does not have a marker. Directly, it does not have a marker. Ethical practice is, of course, required of all levels of coaching. There is a document called the ICF Ethical Code of Conduct. Okay, you may want to refer to the Code of Conduct document. Again, no marks. Here on the Code of Ethics, it will be, it's not something that you score on in terms of ethical practice. It's by default expected that anybody who's getting credentialed, who's coming to the world of coaching, will demonstrate ethical practice. So the only disqualifier can be if you do something that is violating the whole coaching construct, then it's a disqualifier, but there are no qualifiers for ethical practice. The second competency, which is the coaching mindset, embodying a coaching mindset, again, does not have any direct markers. The markers that you see over here, which are listed down, a reflective practice, supporting the client's perception, these the markers that you see over here are actually coming from competencies 4, 5, 6, and 7. So not even from agreement, but from trust and safety, keeping presence, evoking awareness, and listening actively. So there are a specific 2 markers from each of these competencies that make up the evaluation part for the second core competency, which is embodying a coaching mindset. Okay, and if you have a question or if you need more clarity, we'll come back. Let's look at the markers for 3, 4, 5 for the rest of the competencies, especially look at 3, 4, 5, 6, and I will correlate it how it ties into the markers for coaching mindset. So basically what it means is, let's look at 3, 4, 5, and I'll clarify this, this particular second competency. I'll clarify the markers for you in a moment, okay? So there are 4 markers for competency 3, 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, and 4. Identify or confirm what the client wants, define or reconfirm measures of success, explore what is important or meaningful for the client, and define what the client believes. Okay, and these are all part of the third coaching competency, which is establishing and maintaining agreement. The fourth competency is about, again, you've got 4 markers there. Cultivating trust and safety, acknowledges and respects the client's unique talents, insights, and work, shows support, empathy, and concern for the client, acknowledges client's belief or suggestions, and invites the client to respond in any way to the coach's contributions. Now, of these, there are 3 markers here. Acknowledges and respects client's unique talents, insights, and work. And the last 2, acknowledges the client's beliefs, suggestions, and invites the client to respond in any way. These 3 markers are part of what is your core competency 2 markers. So core competency 2 is being evaluated through markers of 3, 4, and 5, 6. So it's simple enough. Don't worry too much. Competency 1 and 2, no direct markers. Competency 3 to 8, you have to look at what the markers are. Okay. How do I look at markers? How should we be using this content? Understand what behavior coach is expected to demonstrate in the coaching conversation. As long as my coaching conversation reflects these points, I will be evaluated positively on these markers. Okay, and demonstrating markers is what will basically decide whether it's a go or a no-go coaching conversation with respect to competencies. Okay, competency 5 and competency 6. Again, 5, I've got 5.1, 5.2, all the 4, 5.3 and 4. Okay, all the markers of competency 5 are part of the coaching, embodying a coaching mindset. Acting in response to the whole person. So being present completely, response to what the client wants to accomplish, supporting the client to choose what happens in this session, demonstrates curiosity to learn more about the client, allows for silence, pause, reflection. All the markers of presence are part of your coaching mindset. And 2 markers from active listening, questions and observations are customized. Okay, which means you can't go into with a list of questions. You can't go into a coaching session saying, oh, this seems to be some powerful, important questions to ask, so I'm going to ask my client these questions. They have to come off the conversation. They have to be in response to what the client is sharing or observing. Inquire about and explore the word the client uses. Explores the client's energy shifts, non-verbal cues. Inquires about, there's a typo here, I'm sorry, but inquires about how the client currently perceives themselves. Allows the client to complete speaking without interrupting. So if you're interrupting, you're cutting off a client midway saying, yeah, I understood what you're saying. So it's a disqualifier. You will lose this, you'll lose getting marked on this particular marker. And finally, summarizing what the client has communicated. Evoking awareness and facilitating growth. So like active listening feeds in pretty much directly into evoking awareness, pretty much feeds in directly to facilitating growth, because that's where the shift in clients' thinking will come from. So asking clients about their client's current way of thinking and belief, and helping the client explore beyond the current thinking. Okay. Behaving towards the outcome the client desires, sharing observations, asking clear, open-ended questions, using language that is generally clear and concise, allowing the client to do most of the talking. Okay. And the last one, finally, facilitating client growth. It's about allowing the client to explore progress. What is transforming for them as they progress on their journey. To state or explore the client's learning about themselves and the situation. Consider how they will use this learning. Design post-session thinking, reflection, or action. Design the best method of accountability. And last, but certainly not the least, is celebrating the progress and learning. Good so far? This is what we need to demonstrate. Now, I can understand that it's a lot to process. It's a lot of food for thought at this point in time. Don't worry. In the coming sessions, we are going to look at each competency in detail.
May I ask one question?
Yes, Deepa.
You told do not interrupt the client while speaking. Actually, if the client gets into a loop of repeating number of times what do I do? Still keep on listening or tell him, no, I've heard you enough, now you don't speak?
No, so you can't say I've heard you enough. You can say something like, you know, as you were sharing that, and I heard you bring this up a couple of times, Meghna, I heard you say that, you know, when this trigger happens and then you go into this line of thinking and eventually you're coming to this result. May I share with you that I am noticing a pattern? So share what you're observing. Then you pass the baton back to the client saying, you know, did you notice this about yourself? And then let them say what they want to say. Yes, no, maybe, but bring to their awareness. Yes. Yeah, don't cut them off, but.
I have one question regarding design best methods of accountability.
Yeah.
Can we have accountability partner? Maybe maybe someone he knows, or can coach also be an accountability partner?
I don't know. I don't know what your client is saying. What would your client prefer? Okay, so ask the question that how will you track your progress? Is there any mechanism you have to keep yourself accountable to your progress or to your plan? Client will say, no, I will track it. How will you track it? Would it be helpful for you to have that as a part of your support mechanism? Client says yes. Then you ask them that who is a good person to help you keep the accountability. Client may choose the coach, client may choose a partner, client may choose a colleague, don't know where the client is going to come from. But bring in the question, accountability and support. Okay, if the client does not choose the coach, it's always still a good idea to say, how can I as your coach support you?
Okay.
Okay, both questions to be asked, but the client will take the call on who he wants the accountability partner to be. Our question should be, now that you've designed these actions and you're planning to, over the next 3 weeks, take these actions, you're taking some ongoing actions towards these objectives. Do you think it is a good idea for you to have a mechanism to keep yourself accountable and track your progress? Client says, no, I will track. I don't need a partner. It's their call.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, so markers and so markers, I just wanted to share one thing about ICF evaluation. Look, every evaluation at whichever point of the journey you are starts with the presupposition that it is a great coaching conversation. It's a pass. So ICF says we'll not decide at pass and fail. We'll start with assumption that the coach is passing the conversation. Only if there are too many missed opportunities as the conversation progresses and say, okay, there's a miss on the presence, there's a miss on the listening, there's a miss on evoking awareness. The client had a deep emotional outburst and the coach did not tap into it and so on. Okay, if there are missed opportunities to demonstrate markers, that's when we lose marks. So what are the things that we should be mindful about demonstrating?
Shouldn't be sending such kind of conversation for evaluation, right?
Well, ideally you should be sending in a conversation that's got all your markers in.
Okay, I see. Okay.
Yeah, okay. So with this program, thankfully, all the MML participants, you all are covered until, because it's an ACTP program. As long as, you're applying for your ACCPCC credentials, you're covered. When you go, if you progress further on your journey, you have to look at ICF evaluation, but the competencies for any level of coaching remain the same. The competency model remains the same. The evaluation mechanism and the markers remain the same. Okay. Questions on credentialing? Quick show of hands. How many of you are targeting getting to a credential? See Karthik, yeah. Lovely. Seema, Anupma, I see some hands raised. Very good, lovely. So it's an ACTP program. So your evaluation on, it will happen along with your mentoring as a part of this program itself. So for now, you don't have to worry about going to ICF assessors. Okay, so pretty much just about top of the hour, we are at the end of our session. It's a lot of food for thought and processing. Focus on reading and rereading your markers. Look at the ethical code of document, the ethical code of conduct document. It's a great place where you can, pick up tips that you want to be mindful of. It's going to be also required when you apply for PCC credential or ACC credential. There are two elements to it, right? There is a test. So there is an assessment of your cause that will be done by MML. There is also a exam that you need to give online. This exam is called CKA, Coach Knowledge Assessment. The Coach Knowledge Assessment is based only on two factors: ethical code of conduct document and your description of competencies. And remember, I said in the beginning that if you only apply for credential, that's when the sections of your competencies come into play. When you give your CKA, that's when the structure of your question is based on which section the competencies are lying in. And then you may have some questions on application of those competencies in practical scenarios. So when you apply for credentialing, you will have to give at least once in your coaching journey somewhere, you have to answer the coach knowledge assessment. And that's when your markers, understanding of the competencies as well as understanding of the ethical code of conduct will come into requirement.